Hi guys, and welcome to the guide. In this episode we're talking about the North American B-25 Mitchell, a plane that is so cool that if Han Solo was alive in World War II, this would have been the plane that he would have flown. So this is like the Millennium Falcon of World War II, the B-25 Mitchell. It was named after a General William Billy Mitchell who got himself court-martialed and fired in 1925 because he kept bugging the crap out of the Army Air Force's top brass about how they needed to upgrade their Air Force, but they just didn't want to listen to him. And then right before World War II, he got vindicated, so they decided to name a bomber after him. So that's how this bomber got its name. It's named after a General William Billy Mitchell, and Billy was just his nickname because he didn't like being called William. Apparently, he was like, "Call me Billy. Fuck William. It's a horrible name." Alright, so the B-25 was built as a medium bomber for the war, but it proved to be one of the most versatile aircraft during the war, at least for the Americans. There was many parties in the war, but as far as the Americans are concerned, this was an extremely versatile aircraft. And more than 11,000 would be produced from 1940 through 1945. It was mostly flown by the United States Army Air Corps, which was what the Air Force was called before it was called the Air Force. It was called the United States Army Air Corps. But the B-25 was flown by the British and the Soviet Union through the Lend-Lease Act, where the United States just made a whole bunch of money off of everybody in the world at that point in time. But to get to the specs, it was 53 feet long and had a wingspan of 68 feet. It had a top speed of 284 miles per hour at 15,000 feet, which doesn't sound like much, but believe me, if you get this thing into a dive, it'll really start going. And if you put it in a steep enough dive, the wings will come off of it because it really starts going. But it was powered by two Wright 2600 Cyclone engines. They were 14-cylinder radial engines, and each produced 1,724 horsepower. My bad. So a total of about 3,500 horsepower per plane. Each plane had two engines on it, and those engines produced 1,724 horsepower. So about a total of 3,500 horsepower is what you get, playing, which is a lot of horsepower. And they had a range of 1,500 miles and a ceiling of 21,000 feet. So that's about as high as they could get. Most B-25s that were specifically designed for the traditional World War II flat-level bombing raids came with 5 to 6 50 caliber machine guns spread out throughout the airframe for defensive purposes. So you got the tail gunner who has two 50 caliber machine guns at his disposal, and then you got the ball turret gunner up on top of the fuselage who has two 50 caliber machine guns at his disposal. And then you got the two sticking out the side, and then a lot of them had one 50 caliber machine gun that stuck out the nose. And they were all for defensive purposes, just in case an enemy fighter decided to come along and pick a fight with the B-25. The one that I'm flying in this game, in addition to that, has four 50 caliber machine guns sticking out the nose that are at the pilot's discretion. These were mostly used for ground operations against enemy forces on the ground as like close air support in real life. In this game, I try to use them against enemy fighters, which works sometimes, not all the time. But you'd be amazed, you jump in there with the B-25, you scare the piss out of some enemy fighters who just are not expecting it. And then there was the H model of the B-25, which it came with one 75mm cannon and 8 50 caliber machine guns sticking out the nose, along with the 6 defensive machine guns throughout the airframe. This B-25 was specifically built for close air support, and more specifically for anti-shipping, like merchant vessel shipping in the Pacific theater. It was purpose-built to go hunt Japanese ships. And it did a really good job of it from what I imagine. I'm thinking it didn't quite go up against like battleships or cruisers, but mostly like the merchant vessels, that the supply ships, the ships that brought resources, materials, you know, food, ammunition, more soldiers to the Japanese islands in the war. I think that's really what this plane was designed and purpose-built, to take those ships out. Not like the super heavily defended battleships or Japanese cruisers, but the smaller, lighter defended merchant vessels that were needed as just the supply ships. That's what this airplane was specifically designed to take out. And it did a really good job with it. I mean, it did come along with a 75mm cannon. They pretty much stuck a tank cannon in an airplane in the B-25H model, which is ridiculously awesome. They stuck a gun designed for a super heavy tank in an airplane that flies. That's what they did with the H model, which is freaking awesome if you ask me. But besides the point, the B-25 was originally conceived in 1938 when the United States Army Air Corps requested for a 2-engine attack plane / bomber, and the North American company came back to them with the proposal for the B-25, which was accepted because it had a lot of, you know, futuristic concepts for the time. It had a ball turret, which was a very revolutionary concept for the time. And it first flew in January 1939 and went into service in the spring of 1941. I mean, things just moved faster back in the day. Nowadays, it takes like 10-15 years to get a plane into service. Back then, it took 3 years. It took 3 years back then to get a plane into service. Just shows you how technology is advanced, I guess, or de-advanced, however you want to view it. The B-25 was chosen for the Doolittle raid, which was led by James A. Doolittle, who was a famous racing pilot in the 1920s, an extremely famous racing pilot apparently. Pretty much it was 16 B-25s that took off of the aircraft carrier, the USS Hornet, in the Pacific theaters, and their whole goal in life was to fly over Tokyo, Japan, bomb Tokyo, and then hopefully have enough fuel to make it to friendly mainland China, and then land with everything good and intact, which didn't happen because most of them ran out of gas and had to ditch, and a lot of them got captured by the Japanese forces, but some did make it to mainland China. But it was a huge propaganda coup in the early stages of World War II when, to be honest, the United States and the Allies didn't have a lot to be bragging about, so they just needed something for the newsreels to make the people back home feel like they could win this thing that they just got themselves involved with. And the Doolittle raid was a huge propaganda boost and a huge morale boost for the United States citizens back home in mainland US. For the most part throughout the war, the B-25 proved itself to be an extremely reliable aircraft that everybody loved to fly. It was extremely versatile. It wasn't the fastest airplane, but it was extremely reliable, which means a lot whenever bullets are flying at you. That's big bonus in the minds of the flight crews that flew it. It flew, as mentioned before, by the United States and Great Britain and the Soviet Union, so all major Allied powers flew it during World War II. It carried out a total of 63,177 missions and dropped a total of 84,098 tons of bombs during the war, which is a whole crap totem of bombs, and is responsible for shooting down 193 enemy aircraft, making it an extremely awesome airplane of World War II. Thanks for watching.